Right. So, welcome to the first episode of Flame of the West. We're here today to talk about music, and we're trying to find it quite difficult to get ourselves started, the ball rolling. The reason is that the reason why I want to talk about it is the pandemic has made some what they call revealed preferences about some of the friends that we know and some of the bands we know regarding their attitude towards music and their attitude towards the rebellious nature of the metal music that we've both grew up with, taken part in. Now we just want to sort of put it to rights, and we thought what a better way to start a conversation and a show which is going to cover on these subjects than on something we know quite a bit about, to be fair. So yeah. What have you got to say about that?
Well, I mean, again, like going back to what I said just before, it's like we've been meaning to talk to each other now since before all this shit kicked off.
Yeah,
realistically, you know, and it was going to be something completely different when we first, when you first told me about the podcast. It was obviously going to be about something not related to any of this, because obviously we didn't have the vision to know what was going to happen in a year from that point. But I think, now, with everything that's gone on, well, what was the thing we said the other day? How, a lot of people think that, it's not the end of times, or, we've lost loads of friends or whatever. Well, I think it's made stronger friends, to be honest. I mean, it's probably a time I've made so many friends over the last, 2 years since all this, but, people that you just know within a 5-minute conversation of, where they stand.
Yeah.
Just eye contact even with them, And I think, I guess what we've been trying to talk about with this, relating the whole music element, is just from my own personal, experience. It feels like a bit of a betrayal.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we originally wanted to do a show years ago when I used to have a separate podcast. We was just talking about, and it would have been about music, obviously. Sorry, I had to turn off something off then. It would have obviously been about music, but it would have been a very different sort of stance. We were obviously very politically different back then. I'd say my political stance has sort of gone full circling away, in that I've always been a default, what Andrew Breitbart would have called a default sort of liberal. In that I had very strong sort of like green views, but obviously like lowercase sort of green views in regards to the world. When we went away to a festival in France, I remember one of the people there was I had a fucking can of beer, and then I'd finish with it, and he was like, "Oh, just chuck it on the fucking ground." I was like, "No, I'm fucking doing that." And he said, "Oh, well," he said, "Well, it's just France, isn't it?" I was like, "No, it's all fucking Earth, mate. I'm going to throw it on the fucking ground." And one of the friends was like, one of our other friends was like, I didn't know you were like that. But that's just obviously, the way I've always been. But now I've sort of went into, I thought politics is a lot of shit. It's a load of fucking bollocks. It's a stage show. It's all smoke and mirrors, like Bill Hicks says. It's like it's one guy holding both fucking puppets. And I've sort of gone into it, gone around the fucking mixer of it all, gone from left to right, come out the other side and come out with exactly the same conclusions, but on the other side of it, that it is all fucking bollocks. And the last year, as you said, has proven that the Lords upon high are just following instructions from people below. There's no two ways about that. Anyone with half a fucking brain could see that. But the unfortunate sort of casualty of all of this is that people we have known, like you say, you've made friends that you probably wouldn't have had before, but people we have known now, it's sort of been a soft awakening. Whether if it's snowing, I think it's snowing.
It is. Oh, well,
there you go. It's sort of a soft awakening that. If something was really going to happen, something really bad, they'd be the ones on your doorstep with a knife and fork looking to eat you. So if anything, it's been a blessing, really.
It has. I mean, working in Canada last 2 years, some of the people that I've made from all over the planet as well. I mean, one of my good friends when I was working in the film industry there, one of my good friends that I was working with was from Egypt. It's exactly the same view, but you'd look at him he'd look like a hippie. He's got dreadlocks and everything.
Smashed his arm to pieces.
But he's from Egypt. But then you have a good conversation with him, and he thinks exactly the same thing as us. He didn't know when obviously all the COVID stuff was going on, and so it was it wasn't hard to kind of find out. It took 5-minute long conversation, and I've got tons of friends like that now that I still speak with now.
You have that sort of networking opportunity that obviously I haven't had because you've been abroad and you've done certain work and stuff like that. But Tom Sheridan calls it the tribe. There's a certain amount of people that just think the same way. And there's another thing he said before as well, which completely stuck with me, that he said some Hindu sort of scholars now think there are more bodies than souls, and that's something that rang with me so fucking true, because I used to have, when I was a kid, and you believe certain things and you don't really question it, but there's even things that contradict each other, because obviously growing up in England, you sort of get raised a Christian, and it's like a Church of England sort of soft, like bakery sales on Saturdays, and the old bags fucking, taking fucking, coins to, whatever. But you get, you mix that as well with like reincarnation. And I used to always think, how can you fucking get reincarnated when there's more people on the planet than there was 100 years ago? But now I think, there's probably some truth in that a lot of people now are just meat bags. They don't have a soul inside of them. But the few people that do remain, and this is obviously like, I've turned the esotericism like up to fucking 50 straight away, straight off the bat. But that explains why.
But that'll link into the whole music element of it, though, because what is music, realistically,
exactly,
in a nutshell?
But like they...
why do you think some of the musicians realistically should have a bit more of an understanding what's going on?
Yeah, definitely. Because
they've always been about, especially in our scenes,
it's
always been about symbology.
I think we sort of skipped over in this sort of recording, because we had to start a few times, that obviously we know each other because of music. And what... Should we do a quick sort of history of like what stuff you've got, just a quick sort of like 30 minute sort of a history of like bands you've been into? Like, what was the first band you were really into?
I was a chav.
Oh my god! Oh my god!
I was a chav, and I can't remember. But it wasn't.
Even you were a kid.
But it wasn't. Yeah, but don't forget though, it wasn't really like being a chav when you was younger.
Not the way
it was just. It was like being a normie.
Yeah, of course.
But it was just obviously when that fashion.
What were you into when you were a little kid? Because I tell you,
I wasn't really into music that much.
My big one was fucking Michael Jackson. That was the big one for me when I was a little kid. And my parents were both into rock music anyway, so it was really easy for me to get into it. So there was always like bands around, like the old man's like favourite bands like Led Zeppelin and Beatles and that. So it was always around. My mother's was always Motorhead. So there's all these bands have always been sort of around. So it's easy for me to get into it. But when I was a kid, it was fucking Michael Jackson, the whitest black man you'll ever meet. So where did you start then?
Well, Mum and Dad listened to music. Mum would always, she had all the Queen anthology VHSs with all of the.
Oh yeah, I think you discussed that before.
With all of every single video that they'd ever done.
Closer.
And I'd always come back home from school. Me and my sister, we'd stick them on all the time. But it didn't really. The music then, when I was a kid, didn't direct your life.
No,
if you know what I mean. It was just music that you liked, the interest. Yeah. Queen, that video, it's kind of magic. Yeah, it's amazing. It didn't really change your image. No,
of course not. I think we're sort of like that sort of like, it's true pop music, isn't it? Both those. Obviously, Queen's a rock band, but then they became very much a pop group, sort of in the sort of the later days of them. Obviously, Michael Jackson's a pop group from the start, but like your subcultures and your subsets around, especially schools. I think there's only like 5 years aged between me and you. Is always based around music, wasn't it? That was pretty much what it was. That's how you found your feet with your friends. And I think all of my friends, actually thinking about it, are all because of music. Like all of my friends I still keep is because we got into music together. And you assume you're all on the same wavelength, and that's why you're into the music. But I do think you have to come to realise that the way you enjoy something can be very different to the way somebody else enjoys something. So you might be enjoying it on a spiritual level, on a deep level, and they don't see that. They just have it's alternative. So
it's like the cartoon characterization of it, rather than the meat of what's actually being said.
Yeah.
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head with that, and going back to why I've connected with so many people that haven't been a part of the music scene.
No, definitely not. No,
because I think the importance is, again, we've based our lives over the last 15, 20 years now over one particular style of music. Really, it's shaped our image. And like you just said, you've got mates that you've only known through music, whereas the last 2 years, for me personally, it's been like, well, fuck, I'm making friends now through something that has got nothing at all to do with music at all, but spiritual background.
And that's how shallow it is. Like you've got friends based on just music, and if you take the music away, what have you got left? If you've got nothing else to talk about, if you can only talk about the interests and what music you listen to, when you strip that away, it's such a shallow void, really, I suppose.
Well, and like I said to you earlier, that's why it feels like a bit of a betrayal, really, because I always had the impression that especially in like the death metal scene, black metal, extreme metal, heavy metal in general, should have been, the ones with the most depth, really. Which not to say that it's not there, but like again, like, are we the ones that have interpreted it wrong? And I remember I saw a meme a couple of months back, and I can't remember. I did save it. I might have sent it to you, but I tried finding it. I couldn't find it again, and it was something along the lines of like, never judge it too much on the person that has the message, because it's more about the idea and the intent at that exact period of time, And it kind of the whole meme. It wasn't a meme. It was like a Reddit post or something.
It was a leftist meme. It was a fucking essay, and
well, I mean, it was like a couple of paragraphs, but it was so true, and it really made me think like how, especially like the metal scene, just that one little quote, like how superficial a lot of elements of the metal scene in particular is. It's always been about image. It's always been about kind of, not always, not all bands obviously, but and not even like at all times, because it's not to say like, Judas Priest never meant, the things that they spoke about on Defenders of the Faith, but because maybe that idea was there and it wasn't really theirs.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I know I've heard a lot of people say about that before. What makes the idea yours, realistically, and just because they've changed and they've progressed into, realistically the way they are now, pushing certain things, it's like, well, you shouldn't really like forget the idea. But I think the problem is with most people now is that they still see like Judas Priest as the same thing. It's never moved. It's never grown up. It stayed in the same state.
Yeah.
So everything that they think now is obviously reflective of everything that they've ever been.
Yeah.
Whereas for me, it's like, well, I can see the way that they were in the 80s, 70s and 80s and gone, right, okay, but then there's the cut-off. And that's when they should have stopped.
Yeah.
In some ways, because it's...
I'm glad you've come to that conclusion, though, because we were discussing the other day, like in private, and you were saying it's difficult to listen to the older bands now with stuff like that, knowing where they stand now with certain things. But I would find that really difficult myself, because, like we said, those people who made that music aren't the people they are now. And even someone like the brands, like Black Sabbath did, like the Black Lives Matter fucking bullshit T-shirt. But it's like, how much of that is fucking Geezer and Tony in the 70s versus like this fucking mega corp brand now, which everything, neoliberalism, as we know, and we're not going to get too much into this today, but everything just becomes commodified, everything becomes a brand, and all your bands that you're into, they just become product. Everything's just product. You got your fucking Black Sabbath pop vinyl, you've got your Iron Maiden fucking beer, you've got your Judas Priest fucking butt plug, whatever you want, basically. But yeah, I couldn't turn my ears off from stuff that because I enjoy it in a certain way. It's like, we like a bit of Star Wars, obviously, at least we used to, sort of retired Star Wars fans. But the argument would always be like, when George Lucas goes back and makes changes to the stuff, and it's like, it's my product, it's mine now, and it's like, it's not yours once you've made it, once you've released it to the public domain, or public, into the public, it's other people's. It's a cultural societal product now. You can't take it back and go, well, it's mine, I want to do what I fucking want to do with it. And it's the same with this. Once you've released a song out, it might speak to somebody a different way than what you originally intended it to be. You ever listen to the band Rome?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's really weird, because he considers himself a leftist, but you listen to his shit and I'm like, I don't see this here. No. Like the last album, it had that song in it, I think, Born in the EU, which was a bit fucking weird. But then the one before that was like Only Europe Know, and we were never asked, we were told and shit, and it's just like, fucking hell, man. I really I remember listening to that last year, and it struck such a fucking chord with me.
That's why I think it annoys me so much, though, because if it's like, you could have somebody that can own up and admit and say, right, okay, so the music when I first, let's say Rome. When I first started Rome, I saw myself as a leftist. And now all this has gone on, and I've seen the way that things have gone. I've changed because it feels like I need to. I've got to, it's a fight now. And again, going back to that whole betrayal idea, one thing I just kind of expected from these apparent rebellious metalheads and whatever was them to be at the forefront, of that, the voice for the rebels. But it just hasn't been, has he? Because again, going back to the commodity. It's like, they've become so rich and bloated now. They don't need to. They've got to play their shows. They're going to sell their millions, whatever else, and they get their different streams of revenue from everything else. So what does it mean now?
Yeah,
realistically, I'll give you an example as well. When I was working in Bristol, worked for like a furniture hire company, and so my boss, his business was on the up and the up. And moved from one warehouse to one that was like 5 times the size, like in the 2 years that I was there. And it was just like, if there was big corporate events in London or wherever up and down the country, we'd ship off all the furniture and, use it for the event, and then we would collect it. Well, anyway, one of the days, my boss, he comes up and he says, I've had an email off, on LinkedIn. He said, I see. So my boss was on LinkedIn. He said, yeah, I had a request of Bruce Dickinson. Basically, there might be some potential, work for it. And I was going, obviously, man, I'm like, what the fuck? And then, and he said, but it's kind of weird, though. He said, because as I was going through, his biography, it goes pilot, entrepreneur, golf course owner, blah, blah, blah. Like, you're listing, 10, 15 things, and then at the bottom it goes, singer of Iron Maiden. Which, to me, I don't know. It's
like he's ashamed of it.
Well, but it's I can understand the logic to an extent, because he's a business now.
Oh, yeah.
His business, everything else is, especially with his pilot stuff, maybe that was the thing he always wanted to be. So he's always going to have that at the top. But he's only got to those points because of this last thing that he's listed at the bottom. And for me, it'd just be a complete flip. It'd be the other way around. It'd be like, well, that's the only reason I'm a pilot. The only reason I'm doing all these things is because of this thing here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it just, when he told me that, it just seems backwards. That's the thing that has kind of made you the person that you are, like Starship Troopers. Good for you.
Robert Plant's a bit like that, but it's the opposite really. But the only reason I bring him up is because he's sort of ashamed with the Led Zeppelin stuff, and I fucking love Led Zeppelin. But he's a true spirit, and then he just does what he wants to fucking do. He does his fucking shitty folk music. I don't really like it, but he does what he wants to do. He's not being some cringe guy that's going around doing fucking rock and roll music and trying to be down with the kids. He's like, I'm not interested in that. I'm going to go and do what I want to do. But he's the complete. I mean, he lived like the truest rock star life. The Beatles went over and held people's hands and stuff like that. And but then they go over and fucking it's 19-year-old fucking Midland boys just fucking everybody and just doing all the drugs and fucking women with dogs and all sorts of shit. But then he's like, this isn't truly me in a way. Like, I'm gonna go back to I'm gonna live in Wales and live in fucking Kinva, and I'm just gonna fucking chill. And it's like, it's. I only bring that up because of the fact he does seem embarrassed by that, but he wouldn't be doing that folk music now with the budget that he's allowed to do it if he hadn't done that in the early days. But I consider him to be, or maybe I'm wrong, but I'm happy to be called wrong on that as well. But I do consider him to be like a true spirit, and he always gets. And I don't want to stay on this topic of Robert Plant, but he always seems to get flack from people saying he's a miserable bastard, he's all this and he's all that. It's because he's fucking sick of fucking neckbeard virgins who are in the fucking 60s with a tie around their fucking head at their fucking daughter's wedding, thinking they're fucking rock and roll success guy. And he's like, I really like your music, Robert. And he's like, I fucking know, I'm a multi-millionaire. Why don't you just fuck off? But every time someone, I used to think if when you say, he's a bastard, he's like, he's probably a bastard. And I think he's probably fucking sound, to be fair.
Yeah. Imagine if you sat down and had a cup of tea with him.
Yeah.
I suppose, but at the same time, he's had that much he's been in the public eye for so long. You don't need to, for him now, it's like you don't need to play it up.
That's it, isn't it?
The
people that they know to be nice people.
Yeah.
It's only because they know that you're going to report on what they've said, so they're conscious of how they're going to be around people. But once you've walked away, they might go, "God, that was a fucking idiot. That was." So here's another fan coming up. Hey, you doing, mate? You all right? Yeah, really good. But really, they're just like, "When you just go and fucking die in a ditch and leave me alone." Anyway, yeah. So talking about metal music, obviously. Because that's what we know, and that's what we've obviously been involved in and stuff like that. I think there's a hierarchical structure of sub-genres and genres, and I'm not going to too much in the minutiae of it and everything like that. But you've got your big bands like Maiden and Priest and stuff like, I don't fucking know, Sabbath, Metallica. That's a good one, yeah, Metallica. Which if there was ever a true message with those bands, it's got to have been lost to time years ago. And we'll come back to that. We'll come back to that in a sec. But then you've got bands below that, like the subgenres, your death metal and your black metal, and obviously which is what we know a lot about. But those are the bands you always expected to be truer to their image. I'd say. I mean, what do you think?
Well, I mean,
just stick with the big bands. Like, do you think there's like real emotion when fucking Bruce Dickinson's singing Phantom of the Opera for the 50th fucking millionth time? Is he going to break down in tears?
Well, it's dependent, because I mean, the only thing I can think is, like, you know, whenever like the big bands bring out new albums, the one thing that always gets me is that it's, you know, it's like they never really. They aren't. The only reason why these bands are big was because they were groundbreaking.
Yeah.
In a nutshell.
True. Yeah.
That's the only reason. You know, why is Metallica so good? Well, because they were one of the best thrash bands, and thrash was new.
Yeah.
You know, Maiden. Oh well, it was like kind of this operatic, you know, heavy rock. You know, which was essentially, well, the first time was kind of punk, innit, really, but
yeah, first two definitely.
But but again, like, the only reason why they're so big now is because they were the best of the small amount of bands that were there at the time.
Yeah, you're right. There's obviously would have been shitloads of bands that no
reason,
one knows the name
but
of.
That's the only reason why they're known, though.
Yeah.
Well, there's an interesting thing though. So I mean, like, there's bands that have been going the same amount of time. So I mean, Pagan Altar, one of my favourite bands. They started actually a little bit before Maiden. You know, and in my opinion, they've got songs that are just as good.
Yeah,
really.
yeah.
You know, their first couple of albums, you know, that we've got to be corrected whether I'm wrong or not, but it was like either the late 70s, early 80s.
But you do find that, though, don't you? You'll find like the big band, and there's a very similar band just before them, and they've took a lot of inspiration and made probably a better version of it, or at least a more commercial version.
And that's the thing, because as bands like Maiden and you know, kind of progress into this new big open sphere, and everybody in the fucking world knows them now. And they're going on these.
They're probably the biggest band in the world. Yeah, metal band.
Yeah. But you know, again, like, they're only good because they were masters at marketing.
Yeah,
really,
it's true. Eddie, straight away.
Well, yeah,
every album.
Yeah, recognisable. Look at like Steve Harris. You know how much like he kicked members out of the band if they didn't fit the business plan of.
He's very protective over the image, isn't he?
But that's
I spoke to Blaze Bailey recently. Actually, he. I spoke to him for a bit, Blaze Bailey, and he was saying like how protective Steve was of the brand, like at all levels. Like, and I think he got a fucking text message or whatever it would have been the time, of fax, and said "fuck off" because they don't want you anymore. It's because he didn't fit in the brand anymore. And obviously, Bruce was knocking on the door. But yeah, it's a complete image and brand with Maiden.
And I think that's why they shouldn't be the ones to necessarily look up to as being these like. They aren't necessarily. I mean, again, you can go back to what they were doing, and yeah, it was groundbreaking, obviously, but they were just the ones at being the best at being groundbreaking.
Yeah.
You know, and they kind of had the eye to be able to kind of progress it into a bigger audience. But again, like going back to Pagan Altar, like one thing I loved is when Maiden were just coming out with shit album after shit album, and then Pagan Altar come out of nowhere again, like after a long time or something, without playing, and they had Room of Shadows. It's amazing. It's incredible. It's like one of my favourite albums of the last 10 years. And, you know, and it's definitely that old school heavy metal vibe, and it's just like, well, going back to what you were saying about the hierarchical kind of structure of it, you know, we've got to stop expecting now that these big bands, realistically, that they're, you know, that they've got to be the pinnacle and the forefront of like the thought, realistically, because, you know, I guess some people will say, well, they kind of like, you know, sold themselves a long time ago for profit, but
we sold our soul for rock and roll, Black Sabbath.
Well, a long time ago, and but you know, there's obviously the ones that you never hear about, the more cult ones, essentially. You know, why do they usually stand out so much? Because they didn't make a big song and a dance about it. They just still kept playing the small fucking pubs and whatever else for decades. You know, and it was only some of these. Another band called Ashbury. They only got like, you know, they did one album, Endless Skies, 1983. Nothing. Maybe one album after that, then nothing, and then they get picked up decades later by like this one like heavy metal festival in Germany or something, and then they're headlining, and they're like, oh, this crazy, and it's only because of like YouTube, realistically, like albums being streamed and whatever. But I don't know. I just think a lot of these big bands now, People are expecting too much out of them.
Should
really.
we? Yeah, I think we should both settle that we shouldn't expect that from the bigger bands, and you're gonna have to stay close to that, by the way. Yeah, we shouldn't expect it from the big bands. I think we probably agree with that. And I don't think we've ever expected that either, though. It's not something like a new revelation for us. Like you listen to sort of like the Trooper, you know, you don't really sit there crying about the fucking Crimea War. You just go, you know, oh, it's a good tune, you know, and they're Iron Maiden have not done this recently, but their intentions is when they make a song is they go into the studio and they want to make a good song. They don't want to make a message that like rings true with people anymore. And obviously Iron Maiden don't even do that anymore. They don't make good songs anymore. They make 20 fucking bullshit epics.
You know what? That's annoying though, because they'll specifically say sometimes they'll be like, we wanted to write
marketing again, though, isn't it?
We wanted to make a long song because we wrote a long song once.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah. They're the worst of it. Like, the last album is just every song 12 minutes, acoustic intro, fucking outro, chorus fucking 50 times at the end, and it's just it's just empty to me.
Yeah.
You know,
it ticks the boxes though, doesn't it?
Yeah.
From what people expect.
But the weirdest.
Some people, I suppose most people.
We've definitely gone off subject to what we're talking about here, but that's the difference between, not to slag off Iron Maiden fans, but they have been shoveled shit for the last fucking 15 years, and they take it. Judas Priest did Nostradamus. Everyone said that was a pile of fucking shit. Don't do that again, and they haven't. You know, say what you want about the music now, but it's passable. 3-4 minute metal songs, and then, you know, it's fine. But like the Maiden fans just go, cool man, we'll take it. But maybe it's a different sort of fan because I mean, Eddie's a stroke of genius as a marketing tool, and Megadeth tried it, and Motorhead to a degree as well. But nothing really struck a chord like that Eddie did. Like fucking, and it's recognisable, like you said. You'll see it in
a brand.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, but yeah, so we don't expect it from those bands, though, do we?
No.
But the bands below that, I mean, but then. So then you've got your sort of entry level death metal bands like Slayer, and you know, the bigger ones, I suppose, like Obituary and stuff like that. Would you expect it from them to be true to the core? You know where we're going with this conversation. There's a certain guy that I'm going to bring up in a bit from a certain black metal band. Yeah. Do you expect from them to be true? And the reason is we'll skip to the end of the conversation here. And what we're going to talk about is the biggest revealed preferences recently. And there's a band that I don't really listen to, but Rage Against the Machine, obviously the name Rage Against the Machine. You know, they're anti-establishment. The first album was on fucking Sony, but let's ignore that for a minute. Yeah, but they've recently obviously played shows where you had to have a vaccine passport to get in there. You have to do exactly what you're told by the fucking government, and I'm assuming the tickets were fucking hundreds and hundreds of dollars. Otherwise, you can't fucking go in. If anyone pays attention to who those people are, you would have known that fucking 20 years ago they were going to do that, because they're complete grifters, they're complete shills, and they've no interest in making music that means anything, rather than just we're going to sell it. You know, I say jump and you say how high and all that shit, and it's just it's fucking nonsense. And
it's cringy now when you listen to it.
The Cardigan wearing fucking hammer and sickle badge wearing fucking fucktards, that probably rings true for, but they're going to be the first ones in line to have the fucking vaccine. But there's a different standard that I think we've come to expect from black metal bands. You know, extreme metal, yeah, extreme metal, yeah, and you know, there's the blasphemous elements, but we can get onto how fucking fake that is and fake and gay that is. But yeah, so we wouldn't expect that. Would we expect it from like those entry-level extreme metal bands to be true?
It's dependent. We've always, you know, my own experience of, you know, being in as many black metal and death metal bands over the last 15 years now is that we've always been able to pick apart.
How many bands have you been in?
8 or 9. Something like that. Yeah.
What's the biggest show you ever did?
Well, we went on tour in the States, and when I was in Craig School.
What time period are you talking about?
Well, that was
just because obviously it's pre
2017.
Yeah.
So I haven't done anything for 2 years, like since I moved to Canada. I mean, that was. I guess I'll get into that later, but.
Well, yeah, we could talk about.
But yeah, so
incentives to get the vaccine.
Been a part of the scene for 15 years, and going back to saying, like, we've always been able to pick apart, you know, especially in my main band that I've been in, we've always kind of been able to see certain bands that have just seemed like the posers.
Yeah,
The ones that that have been in it just for the fashion element, or or even like one thing that's always griped me, especially when I started getting into recording bands, was just how.
I forgot you were doing that. Yeah.
Well,
yeah,
is how people always take the easy option, which okay, fair enough, you can get things done quick. So like triggering the drums. Or reamping guitars. Yeah, it's quick and you can get something done, but it's easy, and it kind of again goes, especially in the black metal kind of stuff. It kind of goes against what it was about. It was about sounding a bit more rough around the edges. It was like the punk aspect of it, be rough around the edges, and don't be scared of how it's going to sound, because it might sound amazing. And the one thing that has always pissed me off, and where I've kind of been able to pick apart myself personally, apart some of the bands, is how they sound, how the album is, how it just sounds sonically. Like, does it sound overdone? Does it sound like samples that you get off Superior Drummer and whatever, guitar tube amp or whatever, And I've always just been able to kind of tell like what bands are kind of aiming towards from the get go. Like just through listening to them, and can always tell apart the posers, realistically. And I guess any subculture would be able to say the same, when you said about punk. I bet bands like Amoebics, they had the big hair and, and they were crust punks and whatever else, and the leather jackets. But I bet they could still sense, and interesting about them is that they're now considered like, touchy. Because their stance has kind of progressed over the years, of where, like you were saying at first, how you saw yourself as like a lefty before, and you've kind of gone full circle. Well, it's kind of the same with bands like that, Amoebics, But anyway, I'm kind of going off on tangent, but
that's fair enough. I mean, there's a band called Crass, so they're sort of rebellious default lefties, but they've sort of gone just full lefty now, and they've disassociated themselves with certain people because of the fact they have controversial views now, and it's not even like necessarily a politically right view. It's just controversial, and it's like, we can't associate with you anymore. It's like all the fucked up shit, fucked up albums you used to do, and it's like we're gonna run a sort of a contradiction with this, but I think we are we're people of contradiction, but we know our contradictions because obviously we like this fucking horrible music, but then we probably think it's probably not fit for consumption for a lot of people anymore, and it's done more harm for society than it probably it's good. But yeah, we continue.
That's the biggest revelation.
But yeah, that's it. Yeah, but it's like it's trying to control your impulses in a way, like day-to-day physical stuff. There's certain things you'd love to do, but it's not best to indulge in all your in all your passions and wants all the time. You do need to have some sort of. But carry on. Sorry.
I mean, yeah, I don't know. I think it's just kind of hard to, like you were saying about expectation of like maybe the people that are below the popularity level, so they aren't quite Slayer and now they're in this category of extreme metal. What do you kind of expect out of them? I guess is what we were kind of touching on. It's like, and I think realistically looking back at it now, maybe myself personally was expecting too much out of that scene as well, just as much. Because realistically, there's still only a handful, even in the extreme metal scene, there's still only a handful of bands, realistically, that are holding true and aren't scared to, stir the pot.
Well,
but it's again, it's almost like whatever level of like these bands that you got, whether it's Maiden at the top, your Slayers in the middle, the extreme metal bands, here in the underground. There's still only a small percentage of each one, realistically, that like are the black sheep that aren't scared to say things how they are, and even if they're wrong, it doesn't matter. It's like, well, this is my opinion. Get over it.
If you stand by it, then they can't cancel you. Well, they can obviously, like, but he's not that controversial. But like Ricky Gervais has said certain things, and he never apologizes, and they've never tried to cancel him. But if you apologise and then you get they smell blood in the water, they'll kill you. They'll fucking kill you for your opinions. And obviously that's not that controversial. But my music tastes have always been a bit weird because I've not always been to like. And this is how you're sort of an outlier with people, because I remember thinking I'd gone off metal before I'd met you, and because I was into like Slipknot and Korn, those sort of bands you're into, and they rang true with me at a time because I was a teenager, and I've always been into like old rock music, Motorhead and Thin Lizzy, AC/DC, things like that. But I remember like the bands that were out at the time were stuff like Trivium and like fucking Kill Switch and all this. And I remember thinking, fuck, these bands are shit. I just don't like them.
Pop music.
And yeah, what it comes down to really for me is that they don't have a soul, and there's no other way for me to describe it. It's just missing something in its sort of integrity of the music. And of all the extreme music, that's why I've always liked black metal the most, I think, because it feels to me the most like old school rock and roll. Like you said, low production values, just getting in there, getting it done. It's not too much about like, I mean, I like stuff like some of the technical death metal stuff, but it's very high production values, and like you said, the triggers on the drums, and you got to hit every note fucking perfect in that. You might have feedback and bum notes and that on the black metal production. It feels more real. So when you've got people like Nurgle who comes out as a fucking complete bumder, for lack of a better term, and the true person is revealed, that he's a complete fucking grifter, he's a complete fucking shill, it's going to be very difficult to listen to his. I mean, his music's high production black metal. It's like, it's not like, it doesn't sound like fucking, mayhem.
It always kind of has been. I think they've only done like one album where it has been that, kind of old school sound.
Yeah. I mean, they all do that, don't they? I mean, like, different genre obviously, but like a Monomarth, like that, it's a bit of a LARP now. They're called a death metal band because they're far from it. They're just like harsh vocals, Man of War or something. It's like, but yeah, that's drew the line in the sand between me and a lot of my friends, I think, because they still respect him. They'll like, his fucking Instagram post or whatever like that. Don't buy my album, get the vaccine for me old dad and shit like that. And he is the epitome of, like, he's always talking about fucking anti-Christian and all this, all Poland and that. But if you mentioned the Merchants or the other subset of Abrahamic religion, he would come to your house and burn your fucking house down. And I remember I've said this the other day, but I remember Danny Filth talking about it years ago, about that the only stuff black metal talks about is Christianity, and because it's fucking easy. And I think that reveals a lot about the people who take part in these bands. They pick on targets that are easy. Like, well, we're going to do a death metal album and we're going to talk about murder. That's
a bit of a on the spot revelation right there, though. It's like, if that mindset is already there, then to only be able to pick on the weak, essentially. Well, how is that? No, and going back to what we were saying about your one friend who you say is a communist. How is it not the same? It's not the same thing, then, isn't it? It's like, if I remember, I had a really small like spark of an idea, like when I watched that black metal film, the one came out.
You watched that? Oh my god!
What, just to see what it was like, because it was all about.
Varg was fuming.
But it was just to kind of see it. And there was one point where I'd said to my one friend, I said I can kind of understand, like, all these church burnings, whatever else. It's like, it's like it was like picking on the weak target. And yeah, granted, it had more. Christianity had a lot more sway in some countries than others, but essentially it didn't have the same strength as it did 100 years ago. We can thank the wars for that, whatever reasons. And there was one thing that I noticed on that film where I said, well, I'm starting to see a bit of a connection of that old school mindset of, like, we've got to destroy Christianity and whatever else, and because we've got to reintroduce, well, whatever. I mean, you had differences of opinions between them all, I suppose, but I've gone on a bit of a circle. But what you just said with that about them preying on the weak, that's why, to me, now when I see some of these bands and artists kind of say things like that, like Nurgle, realistically, it's like, again, there is just, it fulfills that Marxist kind of mindset anyway. Yeah.
No, I was going to say that because it's sort of soft Marxism, but like that's where you are with comedy. Like they always say now, you should not punch down. You should only punch up. And in their heads, they're punching up Christianity. The big bad capitalist right wing man, we're punching up. But any other subgroup, any other religion, it's punching down. But you could be talking about groups that are of power beyond recognition. Anything completely unrecognisable what you would have had 200 years ago. But that's punching down. Or people have different power groups and that, it's punching down. But Mayhem's interesting because obviously talking about that film and it's all about mayhem. They're interesting because the main two, obviously Varg and Euronymous, they're the sort of the main two of the band. That's all the big rivalries about. And he was a communist, wasn't he?
That's what Euronymous.
Yeah,
what they were saying.
Yeah. And he was probably anti-Christian in much that he was anti-West. But Varg he moved himself away from the Satanism stuff and was obviously more looking at the pagan stuff and traditional Norway stuff. And he's probably he said himself. He says Christianity is just a subgroup of its birthing religion, obviously Judaism. So he comes at it from a completely different angle. But they both have the same. Basically what we talk about really with the music. They come at it from different angles, but they think they've got the same opinion, or to put it back the same way again. But they're actually completely different, and obviously they ended up badly for one of them.
Right, and they both fill the useful idiot kind of category.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
for the day, realistically, because I guess even could you imagine Varg now? 30 years later or something, saying, well, you got these wooden churches, which is the only place in the world where you got them, which kind of still represented a small aspect of like traditionalism, and mainly through the architectural style more so than the practices within the building, but it's kind of interesting to see, like, let's say Euronymous didn't die and used to push him into the future now, like he'd be the same. He'd be the fucking same person as fucking.
He'd be shocking.
He'd be the same person, wouldn't he? Realistically, and you'd say that like their differences now as fucking 50-year-old men would be no different.
Yeah.
It's probably just progressed a little bit more and grown up.
The Varg thing is weird because he's so anti like Christian. He wants to basically like reset culture to how it was like 2,000 years ago, but like obviously we looked at his book the other day. And I've read 2 of his smaller books as well, and I think he's got some good ideas, and he's not afraid to be himself, 100%. But I think he's I hope he listens to this because I would like him to fucking blaze me and rip me apart. But like, he's very delusional in what he says. Like the ideas he comes up with have just seemingly been pulled out of fucking nowhere. Like there's no references. There's no guides or anything like that. And like if you look at like modern paganism, because I struggle with this myself because I don't have a religion. I used to. You're born in this country, sort of like a Christian for the longest time, but then come away and become sort of like a bit of an atheist, and a bit fucking cringe there. But now obviously just sort of like whatever, agnostic, and if you do certain like class A drugs, which we both done, you come more open to these sorts of ideas. But I would like to be. I'd like to consider myself a pagan again with a lowercase p. But then you have literally no idea what the culture is because most of it's taken from like Wiccan stuff, which is like a Victorian era thing, and which is like a bastardization of Christian things anyway. There's nothing left to draw information from at the truest of source of how we would have lived 2,000 years ago, pre-Christianity. So you can draw on pretty much fucking nothing, or you can look at other cultures, and that's why certain things. Hinduism is obviously so old, you can draw certain influences from there. But if you're going to return to tradition, the only option you do have is unfortunately Christianity. Surely, I don't know. Maybe I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I mean, yeah, but what are still some of the oldest surviving like Roman things in England at the minute? One of them is in Bath. The entrance to one of the temples, and and it was apparently one of the first places where they found the merging of the British Celtic Druid. I'm not sure off the top of my head, but it was a merger between the Roman god of something. I think it was the sun. Someone would have to correct me on that. But it's the first time that they'd found like
sounds good to me.
It was the first time that they'd found like the merging of the two things together.
We do have certain things in the country though. You have like Thor's cave.
Well, the name. Well, look at where we live. Midlands,
Yeah,
Wednesbury.
yeah. Wednesbury, Odin. Yeah, Woden. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
Lee, Ley,
Yeah.
Dudley. You know,
Yeah.
all of these words like there's still a connection to it.
Well, if
but-
you look around the house we're in now, I've got fucking green men everywhere.
Yeah.
You know, which is a very old English sort of folklore thing.
but I mean,
So I find it very compelling.
but going back to what you was originally saying, though, like, well, you know, is it that Christianity is like the only thing we can kind of go off? So it's like a yes and a no, isn't it? It's a double-edged
Mhm.
sword, because then you could say, well, there's still things of the Romans left. You know, let's face it, like they were probably the most successful. You know,
Until America. But, well, I don't know. It depends on.
well,
Depends how
even
you
that, though,
consider it.
well, obviously the Roman, I mean the fucking Senate still,
Mhm.
you know. So obviously, despite the Romans not being there, they're still influential. And you know, you could say in some ways that the Americans took what they saw as success within a
definitely.
very
I mean,
successful
their
empire.
buildings are all based around
Exactly, yeah.
Roman
Yeah.
architecture anyway.
But they're all around here. Look at Birmingham Town Hall.
Oh, yeah.
Birmingham Town Hall is an old Greco-Roman,
Mhm.
you know, amphitheater. What, not amphitheater? What do you call it now? That's that thing you have in Greece. It begins with an A.
Don't
The
know.
Acropolis, you know,
Yes,
the kind of
yes.
the big columns, whatever else. You know, that's Dudley Town
Excuse
Hall.
me. I suppose you don't know where. It's hard. It's difficult to sort of distill to the original source because obviously the Roman gods are Greek gods renamed anyway, aren't they?
Mm.
So I don't know what point was a bit vague. No, I've completely gone off.
Well, we
fucking point.
were talking about like traditionalism and how far back realistically, like, could say somebody like Varg go if he's
Mhm.
saying, right, okay, I want it to go proper back 2,000 years, and what you were saying was like, well,
Mhm.
what have you got to go off? Like,
Yeah.
how do you know what it was like 2,000
Well,
years?
Caesar committed a genocide on the Germanic people, didn't he? So yeah, and the only documentation we have of that is through his own fucking diaries. So that's the, like,
Yeah.
you know, there's it's been credited to many people, but obviously history's a lie agreed upon by the victors.
Mm.
So who the fuck knows?
Mm.
Who the fuck knows?
I'm gonna go on
Go
on the next, not on this one because I think we should stick to music. But
Yeah, definitely. But you know, we
I,
won't
I
do it
was,
now.
well, I was like hinting at like before, like I think how, and I guess we can relate it to Nurgle.
Yeah.
Because you know what was the one thing that pissed us off the most? You know, this dude who's apparently this free thinking Satanist who, like, you know, doesn't like to be told what to do, whatever else, and then he uses the term COVIDiots.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
which is obviously
Dehumanising.
obviously a term that like people would always associate with as being conspiracy theorists.
Yeah,
Essentially,
yeah.
you know, that's just the term he's used, is picked apart. You know, and it essentially has the same connotation as a conspiracy theorist.
Mhm.
And you know, going well, and I think maybe we'll talk about this on the next time. But this was what I was saying on my little audio thing, which got deleted annoyingly, a 15-minute audio that got deleted. But what I think a lot of people are starting to get their heads tangled around with at the minute is, you know, and especially on like sort of the dissident right at the minute is this, you know, idea of what, you know, how many talks are you seeing now amongst the dissident right where they're saying like, oh, we've got to be able to differentiate between what's a conspiracy and what's
Mhm.
truth.
Mhm.
You know, it's almost like, yeah, and there was the AA in Keith Woods. You know,
Yeah.
we're talking about truth for hours on end, you know, and
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
and myself, only speaking from my own self, like, you know, some of the more conspiratorial sites that I've paid attention to over for 10 years now, realistically, but paid more attention to in the last 2, they're the ones that are just they're a couple of steps ahead, man.
Mm-hmm.
It's insane. Because you got everybody in like this dissident right movement that are like still trying to figure out what's truth or not. You've got these other communities over here that like don't give a fuck like how people are going to associate them at all. You can call us a COVID, you can call us a conspiracy theorist, you can call us whatever the fuck you like. We don't care. But guess what? We're still going to keep looking at the same things,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And to see the difference in the conspiratorial, using air quotes, you know, research groups, I'll just call them, compared to, you know, certain elements on the dissident right, or even in the normie, you know, like the more conspiratorial ones are the only ones that seem to be a couple of steps ahead because they've dropped the notion of giving a fuck.
Yeah.
They don't care. It's, you know, like, they do not give a fuck. It's like, and you know, on my own take on after like listening to some of these like channels, they're happy to be wrong.
Yeah.
They are very happy to be wrong. They're completely happy to be wrong. And now, one thing that has annoyed me on, some of the channels on the right,
Something like Keith Woods
Millennial Woes was one that annoyed me.
Now.
On Millennial Woes kind of annoyed me the other day because it was like, it was essentially saying like the same arguing points of what normies would have over people that disagree with the COVID narrative.
Mm-hmm.
It was essentially what Millennial Woes was saying. Like, people are conspiracy theorists. Like, it's fucking stupid. Like,
I missed that one. What's that about?
It was recent with Morgoth.
Yeah.
And and it was how, he was saying something along the lines of, he doesn't get how, some conspiracy theorists, like, if somebody says they were talking about somebody like Bill Gates or Klaus Schwab, and what they were saying was like, they get annoyed when they're conspiracy theorists using that, which again is an annoying term because that's what normies use.
It's invented as well, isn't it?
Yeah,
but
the
CIA made it up.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Not fucking JFK.
To dispel fucking.
What is it essentially though? Well, it's questioning.
Yeah,
it's more than anything else. And so what annoyed me on this was how, they were saying about Klaus Schwab and somebody like Bill Gates. And, we all know that they're powerful. Everybody knows that. And yes, some people might think that they might be tools and that they haven't really got the power, which was kind of Millennial Woes' take on it. He said he gets annoyed when conspiracy theorists, using air quotes, start saying, well, he's not the one to look out for. It's the Rockefeller, it's the Rothschilds or whatever else.
I do remember this, yeah.
Like he essentially says something along the lines, and he said, like, he kind of almost gets annoyed that people can't accept that those people have power, which, again, after being involved with some of the more conspiratorial sides, I don't think there's one group out there, maybe there's a couple of outliers, obviously. I don't think there's one group saying, we don't think that these people aren't powerful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There's no, I haven't come across them, man. Not one. Well, I haven't come across, but for them, like I say, I think they're just a couple of steps ahead. Like you've got to be able to find what the connection is between certain things. What's the point otherwise? A lot of
the people on the list and right, I think, are warming up more and more to these ideas, and something on the AA channel recently they talked about was the fact that it might not all just be about fucking money. It can come down to just fucking power, man. We're stuck in such a materialistic mindset, and it's difficult not to fucking have it all over you. To use their terminology, to be covered in the ashes of it because you've been born in the fucking ashes. When you're just stuck in a materialistic mindset, then they've got to be working for somebody else because someone's going to make money out of it. It might not just be about fucking money. It might just be about the fact they just want the fucking power. They just want to fucking stand on top of the fucking, the mountain of skulls like fucking Genghis Khan. Was Genghis Khan fucking bothered about money? He fucking wasn't, was he? He was bothered about going around and, physically, but now metaphysically, fucking penetrating people with a fucking vaccine, and fucking, being for at least for Asia, for the catalyst to start a new fucking culture, for a new world, and that's exactly what they want. It's not about fucking necessarily money.
Well, what was that? That Tony Blair thing.
Yeah.
That he sent. To me, when I look at Tony Blair, on that one. Interview that he sent yesterday. Like, I'm not looking at that in the mindset of this man just wants to make loads of money off everybody through the vaccines.
That's all people think, though. And it's difficult for me as well to make, because for so many years you think it's just about money. What's this? Big pharma making money. If you've got enough money, do you need more fucking money? You don't, do you?
Well, and
you've got enough money.
And that goes into when some people say, oh, well, they can't understand why, let's say everybody died from being jabbed. And they say, well, it makes no sense to them because that's people that they make no money off.
They're customers, yeah.
But again, people, this is why I think the conspiracy.
I think 400,000 people they want the world down to. That's
500 million on the Georgia Stones. It's
it's
a real thing, though. Isn't it?
Keep that's what I want. 500,000 people, please.
But it's a real thing, and you've only got to listen to.
We'll talk about this another time because this is stuff I don't know about. So I'd love to hear it from you.
But I mean, you've only got to listen to Bill Gates' dad and some of the books that he wrote, or Boris Johnson's dad. Read some of the books that they wrote. you know, and these people do not think the same way as us.
But even like people who are like not like Jeff Bezos, he's like, you don't know how much influence he has. I'm not really concerned with it, but just to use an example is when you'd hear people say low IQ takes us, wait, how much money is it? He's got enough money. Who needs more money than what he's got? Well, maybe he just wants to fucking be known as, you know, one of the top 10 of all time history. You know, I'm not even talking about the fucking, because we don't know where we might be at Amazon fucking penetration delivery services with a fucking jab in a few years. We don't know that, but it's not just about money for people. But everyone's stuck in that fucking mindset, and
and again,
it's mental.
Like for me personally, I think that's why some of the more
you've got to be free.
Conspiratorial elements are on a bit more of a couple of steps ahead, and like a more metaphysical understanding of what's going on.
Yeah, that's it. That's definitely for me where I've listened to. Because Lambda's reading the Bible now. I don't know if you know Lambda he's reading the Bible. I've listened to Gen 1 through 5. And it's not something I've ever really read apart from in Sunday school and at school and stuff like that. But yeah, it's a metaphysical reading of it makes so much more sense than the sort of the low IQ takes of people I know, like atheists, who go, you really think Noah had a fucking ark full of animals? And you're like, I don't think anyone thought of that until fucking 200 years ago. And you've got the creationists in America. They obviously take the Bible very literally. But a medieval man didn't fucking take any of it literally. He didn't really think the fucking all the animals got on the boat. What the fuck are you talking about? It's only now that you're stuck in this physical mindset that you can't get yourself away from any deeper metaphysical fucking meaning. And it's a fresh way to look at the world for me. And some people haven't made that transition. I don't know if they'll ever make that transition either. I'm not just talking about religion. I'm just talking about things as a whole. Sort of, there is a deeper metaphysical reality to the world if you step away from all the materialistic shit. But when you talk about the conspiracy theorists, obviously the poster boy one is Alex Jones, and they get rid of these people because they are useful. So like his big thing was the Sandy Hook. They had to get rid of him because he said, "Oh, kids didn't die, crisis actors." And you look into it, it wasn't that. He had someone on his show that said this, and it's like, should a news show be held accountable for everything they put on? Of course not. But on the same day, they got rid of him on everything. Every media company, everything that's all independent apparently. Twitter and Facebook and YouTube, they all operate independently apparently. On the same day, gone. Cut his fucking throat. And there's so much he's uncovered and so much he's coming true, and yet he talks fucking mad, and he's a character, and he sells his protein, his vitamin pills. He's obviously a grifter to a degree. But he went to what's it called, Mollusk, but what's it called? Not Man, obviously, with the
Grove.
Yeah, Bohemian Grove.
Bohemian Grove.
Bohemian Grove. Yeah, he obviously went there, and like this Maxwell thingy case now. It's all been, was it 10,000 images they refused to?
Yeah, never going to show it.
And what's the media focusing on? Media's focusing on fucking Prince Andrew again because it's an easy target. Because he's like, did he fuck a 17-year-old? He's a shit. What about the people who are currently who were friends with him?
What about all the people that are still being trafficked through their other fucking agencies?
I'm not going. I know you said something the other day about the Epstein thing, and I don't want to go there today. But all the people that are calling the shots now, the Gates the William Fence, as they call it, foundations, and all these things, they're all the friends with him. It's a blackmail fucking ring. Like that's you'll never know.
So going full circle to the people like fucking Nurgle then. So after knowing all that shit, after knowing all the it doesn't really take much fucking IQ to figure out. As long as people just pay a little bit of attention and follow the money trail, so to speak. It doesn't take anybody any ounce of time. People think it's difficult and hard, or there's too many rabbit holes to go down, but it's a very easy fucking narrative to follow. Realistically,
people are very scared of free thinking. There was a meme the other day. It wasn't a meme; it was a screenshot from Tinder, and this woman said, double jabbed, as you should be. And the last line, it was something like, it was a couple of fucking nonsense from liberated fucking 21st century woman. But the last line was something like, tell me your most controversial opinion. It's like, you obviously don't want to fucking hear my most controversial opinion because your fucking toes would curl off and you'd die like the fucking wicked witch of the fucking
Get ready, drum roll.
Stupid bitch. But yeah.
Yeah, but then there's that based chap Somebody posted up, 30
Mm-hmm.
years old. And what did you put now? Oh, I can't remember off the top of my head. But he was essentially saying, like, along the lines of like male dominance and
Yeah.
whatever. But
yeah, there's certain these people who claim to be free thinkers, and they're just trying to find their truth. They find the truth. They're not interested in that. I don't know what this has got to do with music there again, but yeah.
Well, it's got a lot.
We'll get back on
I think it has, because going back to the people that we thought might have been the ones that wouldn't have shunned different opinions, different views. Realistically, it's like, if I was to come out with my wildest views of the way the world is, even to my mates in the extreme metal scene, like, they'd have the same opinion as me saying to a normie that COVID's made up.
Yeah. That's where I've definitely come to that.
But I can,
conclusion.
but I've had over the last 2 years much better conversations with religious people, people that I wouldn't have even really associated with, like, not necessarily personally, but more, I wouldn't have had anything to do with them in,
even across paths, I suppose.
Well, but like, I wouldn't have had anything to do with them, like, with me as a black metaler 10 years ago in the past. I was still thinking of, my worldview was still shaped realistically by a pretty liberal atheist understanding of, I consider myself, in air quotes, satanic, satanist or whatever. When I really took the time to focus and figure out what it actually stood for, it's no different to a fucking liberal mindset, really.
Well, they've said that the churches say, so I don't know if you saw that
yeah,
on Twitter.
well,
it was
well,
like, we welcome all gays and fucking whatever else,
Well, that's just the thing. So that's why going on about people like Nurgle and whatever, so it doesn't shock me.
No,
I mean, like, looking at you fucking Baphomet there. What is he?
I know.
He's got fucking tits and a dick.
It's cringe to look at it now. I do have the Knights Templar flag as well, so it balances it out. But that was invented, wasn't it? Because they said that was what they.
But
that's what they tried
again,
them against.
history's written by the victor.
Yeah, but I think
so they obviously had to.
It was a reason to get rid of more, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Basically, they got rid of the Knights Templar, which was like, you're fucking too powerful now. Fucking have you all killed off.
It was an easy tactic, but again, like, it's like, so when I look at things like that, I mean, well, look at your Baphomet and then look at your picture on the left, and struck in the same pose.
He looks like he's giving the old Roman salute.
But again, like,
makers.
It just doesn't surprise me anymore looking at it, because it's, of all the things that we've come to dislike realistically in the modernist sense and the liberal kind of worldview, that's summed up realistically to me on that.
It is quite shocking, sort of
meta
reality of it, isn't it, really?
What's the name of there's a director, I think I told you about him before. It was a director from the 60s and 70s, and he made Lucifer Rising, and on Lucifer Rising, he's got like this gang kind of like jacket on, this shiny silky jacket, and on the back it's got Lucifer written in rainbow writing. The fucking dude's a raging homo, and it's just and then he wrote made another documentary called Hollywood Babylon, talking about all, like, the sleazy kind of shit that was going on since the 1920s, whatever. I'm just thinking, like, when that I can only speak from experience, because of being in the same mindset as like a satanist, I suppose, years ago. When I didn't really think too much. What's the one quote that we said? It's the biggest lie ever told was.
Oh yeah,
the devil doesn't exist.
Yeah.
So as an atheistic thinking, Satanist, so to speak, like, it's kind of true, isn't it? You don't really think, you don't really pay attention to, but only now, when everything's progressed the way that it has 2 years later, and you kind of see rainbow flags everywhere, and fucking drag artists in kids' schools and whatever. Again, that to me has the same symbology. I don't get shocked by it anymore, Jim, because it's all these extreme metal bands. Like, how is it shocking anymore? What's shocking about being an extreme metal band when, again, you've got to have like a fucking COVID pass to go in, half capacity, wearing your masks with no booze? What's shocking about that? You're going to be vaxxed to play the show?
I think it was obviously. I think we sort of ignored a view of sort of definite good and definite evil in the world, and if we did, it was obviously upside down. But fucking hairdryer. I think since 1945, the devil has been replaced with what they call the mid-century Germans in regards to the ultimate evil. So the devil now is a joke, and like Satan's a joke. He's just our mate, isn't he? It's like I'd rather go to hell than heaven. At least to be warm. Oh, the devil made me do it. And all this like really fucking cringe shit. And it's just
to the devil because
and it's just silly. But if you mention the other thing, then and even that was like rebellious for a certain time. Sid Vicious would wear like the the thing, and Attila in Mayhem was wearing, even like 20 years ago, was wearing the costume. You couldn't do that now.
No,
and fucking have you killed. And it's no different than blaspheming in medieval England. If you dressed up like Satan, you'd be fucking you don't physically get fucking like burnt at the stake anymore, but you definitely do. On a metaphysical level, you'll be shunned from society. Your friends won't talk to you anymore. You won't be able to get a job. You have to do a couple of weeks in porridge, if nothing else, or at least on a suspended sentence.
And that's why like
it's all
it's coming from it's coming.
Would black metal be like as many bands in it now and as big as it is now? If it was a genre that existed in 1910, it just wouldn't, would it? People would be so fucking scared of their life.
Well, and with you saying that about ease, it's very easy and safe. For somebody like Nurgle to say, vaccinated and ready to fuck with a fucking rainbow flag.
Yeah, it's so disgraceful.
But it's a safe space
really
to be able to say, because it's a liberal. The West is obviously a fucking declined liberal hellhole now. It's hell.
Yeah, no, it really
so of course
is.
You can say.
It really is. Did you see that gig? It wasn't a metal gig, but a few weeks ago, maybe a month or two ago, there was that gig in America, and there was like 3 or 4 people died there. There was like a room, and rap gig. And it was like those. I can't remember the artist's name. I wish I could bring it up, but it's the artist in his depictions of hell when it's like mouths open and like and the fucking, you had to walk through that fucking mouth to go over the artist, the rapper, the I'm not gonna say it. Not yet. Not on episode 1. But you have to walk through the mouth of the rapper. I mean, is that what he was thinking? Was that what the production crew was thinking when they came up with the set? I mean, I don't.
It was like Hieronymus Bosch. The depictions of hell.
That's
that
it. Well done.
It's that same thing, isn't it?
Yeah,
so well, going back to that. So how are you supposed to listen to fucking black and extreme metal bands when that's pop music as well?
Yeah, it is.
Madonna was talking about the fucking Kabbalah and the fucking 80s. So what makes some extreme metal band, from Sweden, or wherever, like, singing about that shit now? Well, there's nothing extreme about it, man. Like, the pop has been doing it, but again,
since what? Like, you think of like.
But what's more occult though, Jim? Realistically, the subversion of it. Realistically, the ones that have been playing it on radio every single day with the exact same message as the ones that you call, taboo in the extreme.
Yeah, you're completely right. It's exactly the same thing. Like, it's probably.
It's the same,
like scary music, like Screaming Jay Hawkins and shit like that, like in the 60s and stuff like that. And you go, it was scary then, but then, Black Sabbath, like 9 first album, something like that, and then you got stuff like King Diamond and Venom and all those people, and it's exactly the same thing. Like 40 years later, the same imagery, the Baphomet, the sigil, and everything like that, sigil. And all that shit, and it's exactly the same. But these people who are like attracted to it now are still the people who think it's rebellious. Like they'll walk around, and I talked about it earlier about the shirt company I'm wearing now. They've got shirts which are there to offend, but they walk around and they're like, they're fucking hard. The shirt says like, you're a cunt or something like. Just honestly, it's as crass as that. You're wearing that around fucking Tesco. My daughter's there, and if I come up to you and say, listen here, you purple-haired fucking cunts, you take that off or I'll smash your fucking face in. I know the response I'm going to get, and it's not going to be, they're going to attack me, they're going to cry, they're going to blog about it, they might call the fucking police on me, which is absolutely shocking. You're wearing, it's, that shouldn't be fit to wear around society. You shouldn't be wearing stuff like that. And the only you've allowed a brand, you've allowed a marketing company to market your rebelliousness back to you, but you're not being rebellious in any way, because, like you say, you've got your mask, you've got your fucking visor, you've got your passport, you've got your jabs, and what's rebellious about you? There's fucking nothing.
No.
I mean, we can talk about the music again, and that's obviously. I don't. Were you invited to play that gig that you mentioned?
No,
you dropped out of it.
Well, no, but so when it was the last couple of months of being in Canada before I moved back, and I was staying with some good mates, and my one friend Matt, he was playing in one of the bands, and his band members were kind of forcing him because Vancouver hadn't had shows for a long time. I think even fucking England was having shows sooner than they. And that's saying something.
Yeah, we know there was because of the dichotomy of it that you're going to talk about in a minute. With your mother.
With what?
When she was when she.
Oh yeah.
It's worth
That's
putting on the record.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Well, yeah. So I'll talk about that in a sec. But yeah, so the one festival, and it's this occult fucking extreme metal company. Whatever, man. Covenant Festival. It's like I had this idea about them, like when I first played with them, 2016, with the bands that I was involved with. Of like, well, this is edge, this is the extreme, this is the occult, this is what it is. It's really underground because, we're looking after each other and we've got the same message. And how weird is that we've got the same message, and then you fast forward 2 years, and it's like me and only a handful of others of that group, the collective, so to speak, are now considered the black sheep because we question things. And it's like, hang on, what? This on the edge of society, community, thing that should be questioning everything and should be very accepting of people being questioning, but they've got to they're just going along with it willy-nilly. And there's not one spark of like, oh, well, something's going on here. And then, so anyway, yeah, going back to Matt, it comes up, this show comes up, and this is where men of conviction need to start standing up now, because his band members, well, I think you should probably get jabbed to play this show. Hell no, I'm not fucking doing it. Hell no. And in fact, I'll quit the band before I have to do it. Well,
what is the band at that point?
Exactly. What's the point? Well, you're going to be forced into doing something that you don't want to do through coercion, and so anyway, like there are still people and bands even that, like, have got that mindset. We'd much rather the band fucking disappear into nothing than it to follow these new fucking set rules for us. Because there's nothing. Because we're meant to be the edgy ones. We're meant to be the ones on, not scared of being told how to think. And going back to that funny thing about my mum.
Well, I can just quickly say that's the some of the topics obviously we might get into in later ones is that's where you see the distinction between someone who's like an edgelord and someone who actually believes and wants to question these things. So like you're with your friends, you might say certain things, certain jokes, but if the reality comes up and you talk about a factual thing or something that you shouldn't be talking about, then then they put them in defensive mode. It's like fight or flight sort of thing. And I know this because of not just the big over, the topic that hangs all over that again we won't go into today, but like even friends, like what again AA would call like revealed preferences. Like there's certain, I know certain people have certain political views, and I don't think that there is as much as in that's what's been told to them by that's what you need to do. You need to vote Labour every year. You need to be pro-refugee. You need to be pro this, pro that. But in their groups, they're the ones sharing the fucking most racist fucking jokes and all that. I'm not a fucking prude, but it's not even funny shit. It's not even funny jokes, but it's just really racist shit. And it's like, but you're the one going around telling everybody that you're pro this, pro that. But you're not. You're fucking not, are you? Because individually, it doesn't bother me. There's the biomass, the bioweapon of people which have been fucking forced to our fucking lands. It's not them who are making the decision to send them over here. There's other people who are sending them this way, and no, I don't think they should be coming here. But they're not making the decision. They don't have the power to travel all that distance on their own. But yeah, continue with that thing. Sorry, with the story. Just as a tangent.
Well,
the difference between the edgelords the people who say the funny jokes, but if you say, actually, that is sort of true, and they go, what?
Well, yeah, it's the fucking NPC meme in a nutshell, isn't it?
Yeah, the blue screen.
What?
Yeah. Boom.
Well, again, like the joke being of this, is
Oh, edit that there.
get rid of that bit. Timestamp.
Continue.
So, was so the irony being when this show was going on in Vancouver, it'd been the first time that they put shows on in almost 2 years at that point. They had to cancel, obviously because of all the COVID stuff. They finally put a show on. It was meant to be 2 days, something like 14 bands, and some of the more edgier bands coming out of Canada. So obviously, some of the bands that play, you got my friend Matt that just said, fuck it, I'd rather quit the band than have to be forced into doing it just to play a fucking shitty show in a shit venue. And the venue sucks dick. It's the worst fucking venue. I played it a couple of times. It's terrible. So, yeah, anyway, so they put the festival on. Half of the bands drop out because, maybe some of the bands have got, more conviction than we thought.
Yeah.
And that they didn't want to go ahead with it. Revenge in particular. Surely. I mean, if they're not...
I don't know them very well, but you told me about them years ago in they're certain music and that. You'd
expect. If they followed it, I'd be absolutely fucking shocked.
I'd throw your whole world upside down.
But, so going back to it, so the show eventually goes on, and it's half of the bands have dropped out, and they changed it to 1 day. And and then but I don't even think bands have dropped out because of the COVID pass in particular. I think bands
travel restrictions and stuff.
Well, you've got to be vaccinated to go to the shows first and foremost. So again, obviously that drops it a little bit. But before they'd even introduced the vaccine pass, the main thing was that it was going to be half capacity and that it was going to be seated. And it was and masks
again, extreme. Just remind the people
so extreme. Bearing in mind,
metal.
Extreme metal. Some occult fucking extreme metal.
Yeah, like this used to be places where bands, seeing these sort of bands, there'd be fucking violence.
You'd be fucking punching everybody.
Stuff,
there'd be mosh pits everywhere. You name it. But now it's seated. There's no booze. Masks. Well, and then the COVID pass because that was after. So that was just the final nail in the coffin for most people. It was just like, I'm not going to say most, a few, as it seems like now. It was, I'm not going to go to a show. Already it's going to be a boring fucking show anyway. But now you're saying that, you've got to do what the government tells you to do just to go and watch some shitty bands. Like the shitty bands, the ones that have complied.
Yeah, that's it. You're right. Yeah.
But then the irony being...
The most cooked bands.
So then the irony being, like, on the same night, my mum back home in England goes to an Elvis Presley tribute show.
Based Elvis.
A fucking Elvis Presley tribute show in Dudley Town Hall, where there's about 1,000 people, and it's seated because it's the Town Hall. Town Hall shows like that.
They'll be standing up, dancing around the handbags.
Yeah, I mean they will fucking stand up at some point. But it's 1,000 people. There's no COVID passport. There's no social distancing. There's no masks. There's no COVID passports. Elvis is getting women onto the stage, getting off with them on the stage. And I was just in fucking complete shock because when Mum had told me this, I was like, you do realise on the same night that there was, an extreme metal show going on in Canada, and yet the Elvis middle-aged women, and the grannies, and now the extreme.
It's mental.
They're the extreme, but then one of my friends was like, oh yeah, but did they have those restrictions? I thought, well, the social distancing shit was still there and whatever else, and it was still recommended that it should be like half capacities or whatever, but people just didn't do it as much, and that's been the nice thing coming back home. There's far less compliant here.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know the way it is in other countries, so I can't comment. But
it's far less compliant in England, from what I've seen anyway. Even been up Dudley today, you don't see as many people walking about with the masks on. Whereas, I'd be walking about in fucking supermarkets in Vancouver. I'd be the only person in there, 500 people in there or something. And you'd have people, 500, let's say 200. You're the only one. Whereas, at least in Dudley, today, walking past police officers without masks on and whatever in shops, they haven't said a fucking word. No, I think we are pretty lucky in some ways.
There's very few people who, like, I think in the metal community have stood by the convictions. And like, I went to see Steve Hughes, obviously a few months ago, and he's very switched on to all this sort of stuff. I had a conversation afterwards. I don't know how much he's switched on or how much he was willing to talk about it. So he might have thought, fucking hell, this guy's a fed. Who knows? Because I just spoke to him out of nowhere. But people there were turning up wearing, because it's a comedy club. I don't know if you've ever been to the comedy club, but it's rows, it's just sets of tables very close. I was sitting next to this fucking big fat bird, and I was, quite a fucking broad lad. I was fucking squashed with this fat bird and my brother as well. But people were coming in wearing masks, and I just thought, who the fuck do you think you've come to see? And I said to my brother, maybe they just think, oh, it's that funny Aussie man who tells jokes about fat goths on waltzers. And I thought, if they're wearing the mask when he comes on, they're going to get their fucking heads ripped off. But I was going to say, I think with metal music, you get into it for different reasons. And maybe in the 60s, maybe in the 70s and the 80s, it was because it was the working man's music. And that's why now, we got this subset of chavs and stuff, and it's a poison culture, that comes from, this fucking, the way the Wiggers all talk and shit like that. That didn't exist fucking in the 70s. That wasn't a thing. But now if you're like a working class, like, you'll become a chav, basically, and you'll listen to that shit and you'll talk like, in that sort of Wigger way, which is just, it's fucking abhorrent. It's absolutely fucking degenerate. But there's a lot of people who probably got into the music back then who wouldn't get into it now because they're getting into these other things, which we know it's top down because they listen to the shit that's on the fucking radio. And, Stormzy gets to play Glastonbury, and it's on Radio 1, and you wouldn't hear like the rock music, anything like that now. But then there's people who get into it because, as I've said earlier, there's just, in our generation, if you were like a fucking smelly loser, you had nowhere else to go. So I'll join this metal subgroup. I don't mind some of the songs. I can get on with board with some of the singles, like Korn, fucking Got the Life. I can listen to that a few times and get by. And you'll know because the enjoyment's when you've said you've played gigs yourself and people are just standing there watching it and they don't even know what the fuck they're doing there. They're just like, this is good.
Arms crossed.
And also from
glued to the floor.
And going to
looking around, scared.
We're going to festivals as well. Like, I've obviously been to loads of festivals, but when I used to go, I used to want to go and see the bands. If there was a year when I didn't want to see the bands, I wouldn't fucking go. But especially like Download, people go now because it's the Download experience. You go in there, you get pissed in a tent for 5 days, and it's like, yeah, but it's part of it. But the main pull of it, you go into a music festival. Otherwise, just go into a field and get pissed. It's just, you're going to listen to the music. But so I think there's a lot of people who are just there because they've got nowhere else to go. And from my opinion now is that's gone. The people getting into music now is gone. It's Marvel now. If you're a fucking sad virgin loser, instead of getting really into fucking music, you're into Marvel movies, and that's your thing now. You're into Marvel movies and collecting pop vinyls, and that's it. And then unless there's more subcategories you can think of, there's obviously people like us who are into it because there's a certain spiritual truth that we found in a lot of the music we listen to, and it speaks to us on a completely different level. And we like certain bands for that reason, and the other subgroups that listen to it come in for different reasons, and it's no wonder that they've completely dropped the trousers to this shit and gone, I just want to listen to the music. I just want to be at the gig. I want to throw my horns in the air and all this other bollocks. So if I need to fucking take the jab and suck a cock and everything else, I'll happily go in there. And that's the most depressing thing I've seen with my friends, that they obviously don't like it the way I do, and they like certain things now as well. Like, I'm not going to mention names here, but there's a person who's really into this fucking rapper, and he's a complete fucking grifter. This rapper is an obvious fucking grifter. He's got this, I'm anti-fucking woke and I'm pro-free speech, all this shit. And it's a complete fucking grift. But people have signed up to it, fucking hook, line and sinker, because it's a message that's different from the mainstream, but it's still a fucking mainstream message. You're not gonna get that necessarily on Radio 1, but you might get it on Radio 2, for instance. I don't know, I went off a tangent there, sorry. But yeah.
No, I think that's probably the problem with the scene as a whole now. Well, let's not even say the scene, with the mindset.
Is it gone though now?
Yeah.
Because
I think people were saying it was gone 10 years ago though, man.
Yeah, because we had that with the other day, obviously at Thingies, New Year's, I'm sure he said that this, you know, people say this scene's, you know, it's gone, you know, it keeps coming back and all this, but it's unnatural that it's unnatural that music genre has lasted as long as it fucking is.
Can you imagine a fucking 15-year-old kid, unless he's got like a fucking dad or something that's already into the kind of music? Well, let's, you know, without the age that we're at now. So let's say when we were kids, you know, our parents were obviously at the age of when fucking Maiden and whatever else came out. So we were kind of introduced to that through just their age group. For us, you know, we're still kind of into the old bands, but for us, like, our music was, you know, was the late 90s, early 2000s, 2010s, like death and black metal. Realistically, you know, the more extremes. For me personally, anyway, that was my scene. That's
the last.
I actually got into that shit before I started listening to, you know, because I was a chav. So I went from
Limp Bizkit.
You see, I went from like bands like that, Limp Bizkit, then Korn, then Slipknot, then Mudvayne, and then
it's like an entry level sort of.
And then I remember the first time I heard bands like Dimmu Borgir, and it was just mind blowing. So then like I progressed into like all this other black metal stuff and death metal, and then only when I got older, I was like, oh, there's this old band called Iron Maiden from like because I just keep wanting the most extreme shit that I'd listen to. Well, so going back to a point,
new metal's probably like the last genre. It felt new at least.
Well, it was
like what's everything 2000s onwards. You know, it's Fukuyama's end of history, but like so 2000 onwards, like it's all the fucking same. Bands now. It's Airborne. It sounds like AC/DC. Well, it gives a shit.
But even stick with the extreme stuff though, just like, you know, because mate.
Continue.
Even stick to like the extreme stuff. So, you know, you got one of the labels in Ireland, one of the biggest ones. I mean, can we name there? Maybe we shouldn't. But anyway,
go on. You're looking to be signed by
Invictus.
Yeah.
Well, I've been on them.
Oh shit! You ain't going on there again.
No, well, it's fine because I mean, this was something that they tried out almost 10 years ago now. You know, when I was in my one band, you know, we played a couple of shows in Dublin. We'd always play in Dublin at the same place every time. And you know, the promoter, he was desperate to try and get some youth there because the youngest person there was like 23. And that was my guitarist.
Yeah.
He was the youngest one. And bearing in mind, I'm like 5-6 years older than him. So the average age was about my age, up to about 50. You know, that was the group of people. So, you know, the promoter of it was just like, right, I'm going to put the show on. It's going to be free. It's going to be free. It's a 2-day festival. It might have been a day or two, but whatever. I'm going to make it free for anybody under the age of 21 to 18. It's going to be free. Nobody turned up between that age.
Jesus Christ.
Nobody. Because you know, they'd already been saying, like, you know, this music is so far, you know, occult, quote, you know, quotation marks. You know, there's nothing new. It's still kind of.
It's paused and cringe, though, I've got to say as well now. The only introduction I think people have now is like, and I had this revelation with somebody the other day, in that, like, if you have a true experience and you listen to a song, it can make you think of that true experience. But now, the only way people know music now is on trailers of films, and they'll pick an old song and they'll make it like the newer version of an old. It's always old songs because no one writes anything fucking new anymore. And all they'll do is associate it with, oh, that was the bit when Spider-Man punched that man in the fucking head, because they don't have a real experience. The Bugman doesn't have a real experience to fucking draw inspiration from. You know, they look at things like, oh, I've really got to get through this now. It reminds me of that bit when Spider-Man did this, and or you know, or whoever else. And yeah, there's no reason for, like, people are into that fucking lo-fi shit now. You know that. I went into a comic book shop the other day, and they had this on. It was just like, it was just completely flat, demoralising. There was no motion. There was no nothing. It was the perfect grey-faced NPC. Get in your fucking pod, Bugman music. Just like, you know,
it's slightly offbeat as well,
and all that. And all you hear in the shops now, every shop you go is just people who can't fucking speak. They haven't got like training in the BBC sort of like English or anything like that. They can barely speak. That they employ people because of certain quotas they have to fit. To do voiceovers in shops and adverts and things like that. And the music you go into is just demoralising shit. Horrible music. You don't want to listen to it. It's not inspiring. It's not uplifting. It doesn't make you feel any emotions. It's like an artificial emotion. It's like somebody has said. It's like you're trying to write a song about love, but you've never experienced it. But your mate's dog told you about it. Told you about fucking. Oh, I know this thing called love, and you go, oh, I'll write a song about it, and not necessarily love, but that's obviously most of pop music's been about love. But now it's just about shit. Like, I'm just going to shake me fanny in your face. Like the big one recently, obviously, or last few years, he's like, he can't play Fairy Tale in New York because it says faggot on it. So we're going to take this off because it says faggot. But he was fucking,
wet ass pussy.
Wet ass pussy, exactly. And it's like you're just pushing degenerate fucking bullshit. But that's more offensive than fucking metal music to me.
What?
Going, oh, the devil, blah,
which,
rock and roll.
But the Pogues.
Yeah, exactly.
The Pogues being more extreme.
Yeah, exactly.
With that word.
Exactly, yeah. Extreme, yeah. It's true. It's true, though.
Imagine like the Pogues playing like Bloodstock.
Yeah,
they get to that point and everyone's like, oh, shut it down.
Here comes the big one. You just come back, you mag at your cheek, like, oh, get off the stage. But then, it's like, it's safe, isn't it? Like, the devil thing, it's safe, rebellious. It's like we said, it's like marketed product brand rebellion. You put on your, like the way people dress, and we've both done this, and we still do it to some degree now, but right, I'm into this music now. Got to get the shirt, got to get the fucking trousers, got to get the everything
boots.
like that. I'm a rebellious person.
Got
now.
to get the patches on my jacket.
Yeah, and we've both done it. Let's not be shy of it. But is it? I mean, it's. I was gonna say, is it unnatural that it's gone on this long? The metal music, really. But nothing's replacing it, because I mean, you like classical music, the eras. So with classical music is just one section of it, but they lasted for like 100 years and shit.
I think we spoke about this before. Why? Well, no.
Let's talk about it now.
Well, some of the most known classic songs. Why sometimes is it a bit more timeless than, let's say, heavy metal?
Yeah, it is.
Why? What's one big difference with some of the most classic, the most famous classical pieces compared to metal? Well, pop music as a whole, what's the one big difference? There's no lyrics.
That's what I was gonna say.
There's nothing. So it's just tones.
You've got to tell a story with just the music, haven't you?
It's tone.
If you take away the lyrics of like your pop song now, what have you got? Fucking just.
If you sent it to people 100 years in the future, they'd be saying that's the same song.
Yeah.
But you could say the same with like, I guess, a lot of metal now.
Yeah.
Well, especially even some of the death metal. Man, really, like the extreme underground death metal stuff now. To me, it's just the same repeated fucking thing.
Yeah,
there's bands that kind of push it in some ways or another, but it's still
you've got to work within that framework, though, haven't you, as well? Like bands like older rock bands, Led Zeppelin, the Beatles, especially the Beatles. Like, listen to the Beatles' first album, and then you listen to fucking 3 or 4 albums in. It's like it might as well be a different fucking band. But if you're a death metal band, you've got to do your blast beats, you've got to do your fast guitars.
Yeah, but
do that.
There's the difference with that though, because even with some of the death metal bands, it's like realistically, death metal's only been around 25, 30 years as we know it now. The style that we know
Early
now,
90s,
and that everyone keeps imitating, is realistically only 20, 25 years. Realistically,
dude, the Beatles were a band
2022 now. Actually, let's say a little bit longer.
Yeah. But the Beatles were a band for like what, fucking 6 years or something. Fucking daft, maybe not. Is it 9 years or something? It's like they did so much, like in that amount of time.
Every album's completely fucking different.
But you listen to fucking not
they created new fucking instruments. New ways of recording.
Yeah, that's a big thing that people look over, because I know a lot of people now, and they just go, "Oh, they're overrated," and go, "You obviously looking at it with 2021 eyes, like they were doing shit with 4 tape tracks and stuff, not like I can do this fucking program here, I can have an infinite amount of tracks here, like analog material." They did all that, and I don't want to fucking get on a tangent about the Beatles, but but they did so much shit in such a limited amount of time, and then you've got a band now will do the same album for fucking 20 years. and it's just
with the same
with the same
production
message,
values
yeah,
of
and
the
just
last
shit.
band that just came out,
yeah.
and still basing all of their
it's
production
saying shit.
values off you know, a standout band that came out 30 years ago.
And you were like on about things like they were doing things because it was hard, and they wanted to try certain techniques because it was hard, and they're not sure they've been doing it before. And you were talking about when you were like doing your own like producing and stuff like that. And when we did our own EP, we got there and the guitarist had his amp with him. I said, "Yeah," what do you mean? He was like, "No, we're not using an amp. We're going to plug straight into the computer and use the fucking." It was like we had to do these EPs in one day, so we just did what we had to do. It was quite cheap and all that, but it's just like, you know, you look at like something like Pink Floyd, and they do like Shine On You Crazy Diamond, and they record just that one section like in a fucking room with the amp to get the perfect fucking sound that they want. It's like, nah, just plug it in and we'll just choose the effect later. Just fucking, there you go. There's your echo in the big room. It's like, yeah, and it sounds like fucking toss. There's nothing real about it. And I know you've always been the same with it regarding that, like with the triggers and stuff like that, and like drum sounds, and you know, you want it in a certain way, and you want it to feel real and raw and not sound like it's come from a fucking machine. Because otherwise, you might as well just do a fucking drum machine. Why not just digitize everything? Digitize the vocals as well. Get a fucking algorithm to write the lyrics for you. Just you know, just type in death, Satan, fucking Christianity, and then generate.
Occult words.
Yeah, that's it.
Well, and you know, I'm not afraid as much to say it now. It just comes across as fucking LARPing.
It is LARPing, isn't it?
Sometimes
it really is LARPing.
it's like, oh, yeah, we got this album where we said some scary words once. It's like, yeah, is that facing the fucking biggest threat that's in front of us now that's in the next coming months?
Yeah, then Eric Clapton's done a song about the fucking the COVID or whatever.
What? So there you go. Eric Clapton, you know.
And what have they done? What have they fucking wanted to hang about to dry, don't they? They keep talking about when he talks about the immigrants in fucking the 80s or whatever. Oh, yeah, he's a racist as well.
Oh, how is it that fucking Morrissey is now more extreme than a lot of these people?
Vegan, fucking farting.
Yeah, but you know, you have like fucking Henry Rollins, whatever, talking about shit in the fucking 80s or whatever, how much he hates fucking poser bands and this, that, and the other. And even specifically brings up, just check out is it Felix Rex, I think. He was called something else before, but he's got a channel that still can pass for videos on YouTube, and he did one the other day, and he said, like, he opens it up with the Henry Rollins interview of where, like, you know, he's talking about like poser bands and whatever else, and he's probably
the biggest laugher of all
time. But that's just it, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
So how is it that a man like Morrissey's now become the more extreme one out of the two?
And he had the look, didn't he? Like Henry Rollins looked like that.
Well,
like
because
he's
and fucking fighting or whatever.
But yeah, I mean, he revealed himself years ago there when he did that interview with Shatner, and he was like, you know, I really love all your music to Shatner, and it's like those spoken word albums are fucking shite, and he wasn't doing it in like a joking way. Yeah. He was just saying, no, they're really good. And it's like, no, they're good because they're shit. Yeah. People like them because they're shit. And he was like, it's like you just suck these fucking balls because it's Shatner. Because he's more famous than you'll ever fucking be. But, you know, he goes on his spoken word tours and all that, and he uses a platform. He used fucking Black Flag as a platform, and Black Flag was better before you. You fucking clown as well. But you are right, Morrissey. Like, you know, with what's it called? That lesbians fucking political party he was involved in for a bit for Britain. Morrissey, sure. Morrissey was talking and he retweeted Morgoth, and that's why Morgoth got that one video taken down, because Morrissey retweeted it. And yeah, like, he's just, you know, 30 years ago you'd be like, what a fucking boring lefty, fucking vegan and all that, because he's actually, he doesn't match with everything you say, but he has strong convictions
because he's gone full circle, like you said at the start.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. And he has strong convictions, and he stood by them. Yeah. And he's more rebellious now than your black metal musician. But for, you know, Nurgle.
Even like think about some of the. I mean, I kind of started listening to Morris. I'd never really listened to him before.
I can't like it. I got to say,
I mean, there's a couple of tracks that I don't mind.
I've got a couple of Smiths albums.
But if there's one
thing, not my taste.
But if there's one thing I've noticed though, is that like, when you read like his lyrics, this is my only take of just a complete fucking noob. To Morrissey and all that. Like, when you look at his lyrics and whatever else, they're very personal. They're very extremely personal. You know, there's not anything against the man. You know, he's not trying to be extreme. You know, realistically, his lyrics are just about what he's thinking. That's why, like, every track, you know, idea wise, is completely different. No, you bringing up saying that at the start about Rage Against the Machine. What's Henry Rollins? What's he talking about? What are his lyrics about in the 80s?
Yeah,
same old fucking shit.
Yeah.
There's Rage Against the Machine and all that, which is just a bit
True.
harder, you know, and they'll probably put a bit more of his conviction in and whatever, but then he still shows his true colours. Well, Morrison now, as you progress 40 years, hasn't really got to apologise for anything before in the past, because
No.
he's just like, this is just some personal lyrics about, like, you know, I wanted to go out and, you know, I haven't got the right
Club
clothes to
now.
wear.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah. You know, he's anti-royal, I'm guessing, isn't he?
Anti-royal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you
As
sort of.
everybody should be.
Well, that's it, isn't it? It's
Tony
like
fucking Blair.
I completely always want us to have a monarchy, but what the monarchy has
Not
become
now.
is not. It's a complete spit in the face of like the last 1,000 years, isn't it? Like we're going to be proud. You know, you might make it. I might make it. If I play my cards right, we're very on the cusp of it. But we won't see 1,000 years since like William the Conqueror, like, you know, which is fucking shocking. And what that represents now, like, you know, you have become anti because of that. Maybe he was just ahead of the game, and he's like, you know, I'm against it because of fucking this shit. You know, rather than just I'm against it because of certain things. I don't know, but
It seems like a more. That's probably mine.
all right.
Oh, that's switching a bit. Seems like just a more. You know, when you listen to Morrissey, he was obviously very thoughtful, whether people like his music or not. But he's obviously very careful and thoughtful of his lyrics. He was a poet, realistically, and again, people either like it or don't. But they can't deny that he was still very personal and poetic with his lyrics. And so again, he doesn't really have much to kind of apologise for going into the future. Whereas, like, you know, let's say like all these bands, whether it was before in the past or even now, which I guess the brunt of what we're talking about, that have always been like, look at us, like we're this, we always have been, we always will be. And then fucking 10 years later, it's like, yeah, okay, you're gonna stand for that. Are you gonna stand? Where's your conviction now in the most important fucking time? Possibly
the only time.
Possibly in human history.
The only time.
Well, your convictions have
time
now
of
got to
your
be
life.
called up for you know, we can never judge it too much on what was more important with it, you know, the last big two catastrophes in the last 100 years. But you know, a lot of old timers have said this does seem more important and more life changing. Like, you know, this is the fork in the road, isn't it? You know, where like whatever happens, like this has never happened
We've
before.
just become data.
We're going into this weird fucking world that nobody knows what's going to happen. Well, some people know what's happening. The powers that be are telling us what's going to happen, you know. And
Like Blair said, we can't stop it. It's coming.
Yeah.
Where's it coming from?
why can't you stop it? Why can't you stop it?
Is it just happening? Is
Yeah.
it coming from some the ultimate being, or is it coming from people like you?
Well,
But but it's as Darren Paul said, and I said to you the other day as well. It's like you try and tell people this, and they think you're fucking mad because you've had all this time to read and to learn all this shit, and you're trying to tell them. And where's the entry to them? Where do you start them off and say you need to listen because your kids ain't gonna have this fucking choice.
religious terminology.
Yeah.
It's worked for fucking centuries before. It's worked for 1,000 years, like you say, since William the Conqueror.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the absence of that language has only been in the last 100 years.
Isn't it like a complete lie as well? Like people think like the oppressive church, like oppressing people day to day, and even things like the mid-century Germans, like they're oppressing people. And as my brother said to me the other day, is like they're on because they always compare it to them. And my brother said, "Is this real? Some vaccine passport or some passport they were using?" And I said, "Well, it's worse, mate, because they're not doing it on their own people." You know, and you know, we're not getting into conspiracy theories, but they weren't doing it on their own people. This shit's going to be on your own people. My family have been here 1,000 fucking years, as I said the other day. You know, and it's like, and then you're going to fucking crush the liberties that are owed now because it's been decided by somebody who's not even from this country that that's the way we're going to go. And you lost me, James. Continue.
How to get through to people?
Yeah.
Stop being. People have got to stop being so on edge with, you know.
It's getting late. But yeah, I mean, just to go back to the music thing. Who else but Morrissey and Eric Clapton have said anything against what's going on? Is there anyone younger? Is my point. Is what I'm trying to say. And there is no rebellious youth now. Like,
So
I mean,
how-
if there ever
how did-
was,
how
if
did
there
they
ever
get
was,
into it?
which you could discuss whether it was top down all along or it's a marketing tool, because kids weren't teenagers. There was no such thing as a teenager until 1960. But it's been so commodified now that even like you go to like your stand high street or your shopping mall and you'll see like every shop is displaying the rainbow flag during the never-ending Pride months and stuff like that. Somewhere like Lush, and it's like, we welcome everybody in this shop, and you're like, well, opposed to the shops where they'll fucking stop you at the door and say, you ain't coming in here, you fag, get out. It doesn't exist, but they'll pretend they're rebelling against the man. It's like, you are the fucking man. You fucking absolute clowns. You fucking donut. But yeah, my point was is that is there anyone speaking out that's not in their fucking 60s rebelling against the or still worried about Christians,
Well,
man.
I mean,
Christianity, the church.
What we've really
Who are the most positive thing in the world anyway? The fucking archbishops, like
Well, yeah, like
the
the
Pope.
Archbishop of
have to-
Canterbury, as you already said.
You got a vaccine passport to get into the Vatican?
Yeah. But I mean, yeah, there's been a lot of the corruption, and they were subverted a long time ago.
Yeah,
There's been a lot of based Catholics that were saying this shit in the fucking 70s and 80s.
Mhm.
We know what's going on.
Yeah,
Yeah. But again, like I suppose leading up, and how do you get people involved, like youth involved with it? Give them the seriousness of what's at stake. Because we've still got to live another fucking maybe 60 years.
Can you do that through music anymore though? Is music just a dead art now?
You can do it through, and I mean, my little cousin was around the other day. Well, he's my cousin's cousin. He's still a cousin. Second cousin. It was a big family party, and a couple of days ago, and he's only 6 years old, and in the back room I got
Is his
like
name
all my,
Perikin Took?
it's full of joke. Well, I had all of my
Bilbo Baggins.
my guitar at the back in the back room, and my electric drum kit's sitting there, and he was just obsessed looking at it. He was just like, because he'd never played one. He's 6 years old, and so just played a little really basic fucking blues lick or something, and he was just fucking captivated. He obviously just didn't. He doesn't really like listen to like fucking blues or anything like that, but it was just more the. Just it was, it's hard to explain. My sister saw it as well.
Yeah.
There was a spark in him, and then so said, "Well, come on, here you sit." He's got tiny little fucking hands anyway, but just sit there like this is called a fret. And when you put your finger down and hit it, and it was just seeing it was beautiful. And then he gets on the electric drums, and he's within 5 minutes he's playing a beat. Because. We've said about it before. Where's the spark coming from? Are all people like completely vague? So, you'd expect like from his upbringing that he wouldn't be like that, but he is. There's something in him.
Well, I'd say the question's wrong then, because I asked obviously I asked, is music relevant, and it's probably always been relevant because it's from folk songs and hymns and stuff like that. You can carry messages down through time, but when you've got it might be that metal is no longer relevant to this anymore. Yeah. And there's a guy called Paul. I don't know how to pronounce his name. Wagner, I think his name is. I don't know if you know him. He's he used to be in an outfit called like Operation Werewolf and all this stuff.
Oh,
it's
yes.
Yeah. But he does his own music as well. And he used to be in black metal bands, and then he did a country album called Failure Counter. I can't remember which one, but it's a country album. I don't fucking listen to country music, and I just listened to it, and I was like, there's like a real truth here. There's like a real spiritual truth to the way he's singing and stuff like that. And I started listening to older stuff like Hank Williams too. I listened to some of his stuff Junior, and it's like, it's fine. It's just like, country music. But you listen to Hank Williams 1, you're like, this is true to the fucking message, man. You listen to like
16 horsepower.
I don't know.
So write
the
down.
band.
Write them down, man. He's a Christian.
There's one about one of the Hank Williams ones, and it's about him dying on his bed, and there's another one about this bird leaving him, and it's just like, it's real fucking heart-wrenching stuff. But one of the bands that you got me into as well, I don't know if you're still into them or not, because their views are very fucking boring. They're Californians, but Drab Majesty.
Oh, I love them.
Yeah, they're so fucking good.
Yeah.
They are so
Yeah, but-
good. And it's not
yeah.
metal music, is
No.
it, at all?
But they're still
But-
accepted by the metal kind of community anyway.
But I really got into a band called Spangle a few years ago,
Mm.
like a psychedelic trance band. And it was one of the best gigs. It was probably the best gig I've ever fucking been to. Went to go and see him with the other half. And it's not metal music at all. But again, it speaks to like a real spiritual truth to me. And it really fucking rang true with me. And listening to Drab Majesty is the same as well. Like, you know, I get this, some of the songs, I get this idea. This sounds fucking mad, but this they're basically like traveling through space. Like there's a Boney M song as well called "Night Flight to Venus," and it's obviously they're like a fucking German disco band with like, you know, he was a German bloke and he hired all these blackbirds and black bloke to fucking do his music for him. But it's like I get the same idea with them, Drab Majesty and Greg Johnson. I think, you know, from Countercurrent, he talks about like we could have been interstellar traveling now if a few things would have gone differently after 1945 or pre 1945. We could be there now. I listen to Drab Majesty. I think could be there now, like traveling through space, like the games like Wolfenstein. Obviously, it's very subversive in a different way. But you play, I think, should be playing as the baddies in this game.
Yeah.
It'd be pretty fucking cool.
Can we switch it round?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, it's like they've got the space travel and all this stuff, and it's shit. It's really great. But Drab Majesty, yeah.
Well, and 16 horsepower were an
I've written
eye. They were an eye-opening band for me because, what's his name, David Eugene Edwards. He's from like, you know, the southern states, and he's just like, you know, he's just kind of lived like in rural America, you know. And he's a pretty devout Christian, you know, and same as his wife and the band members, and yet like that he took inspiration from, you know, the rock and metal, the dark elements of rock and metal, but he just kind of interpreted it with his own Christian take on it, and it's some of the darkest fucking shit out there, man. It's like, you know, in the 90s or whatever, the stuff in the 90s, you know, because it's true to him. And you might not even agree with what his message is, but it's a truthful. It's coming from somewhere truthful to him, and you don't have to agree with it, and you don't have to connect with it. But you know, just knowing that, like, you know, you can just see the things merging together in his own like creative mind and putting it out there, and so now like a lot of, you know, and bands like this can get away with playing metal shows.
Are you still attracted? I think that's definitely what attracted me at the start, like scary music and. I think it was Geezer or Tony talked about that's why they're starting writing Black Sabbath, because of like it makes you feel uncomfortable and makes you feel, you know, you know, and an unease. Is that still excite you now?
Not as much. It's overdone.
Yeah, I don't mean in a metal way, like in a, you know, thing, but like you can listen to like, you know, like some of the Joy Division stuff or something. You just go. This is fucking quite harrowing stuff, you know.
Yeah, I mean, like, yeah. I mean, it's not to say that the music doesn't still have an impact on your emotions when you listen to it. Of course, it does. But I think, like, again, with the current stage of civilization at the minute that we're at the minute, I want to be listening to fucking morally uplifting people, because to me, that is the why have you called this Flame of the West?
I was about to bring that up because we're coming on 2 hours now. I think it'd be a good time to wrap it up.
Yeah.
My first question was, could you make Christian metal, Templar metal, which doesn't suck massive balls? And then the second thing was going to be talking about that band, obviously.
Well, I'd have to. We joked about it before when I was, you know, Dad was showing me around like.
Bring a sword. Have you seen Last Temptation of Christ? Wilhelm Dafoe. It's a good film.
No, I'll have to watch it. William Dafoe, love him.
It's a Scorsese film, but it was controversial when it came out and all that. But there's nothing in it's fucking controversial. Like it's the ending's really quite cool as well. But it's like portrays him more of the man rather than like, you know, the biblical figure with all the sort of the shortcomings of that. But yeah, there's good scenes of the temple and that. Did you see the other day, by the way, there was an article that said we need to start using churches as banks.
As banks?
As banks. Yeah.
Who said that?
Yeah. He said they're a wasted space because no one goes in them anymore. So they need to start to be used as
early life.
Yeah, that's it, yeah. And he said we need to start using them as banks and pubs, basically. Banks. We've come full circle, 2,000 years.
But, well, and to answer your question about that, you know, look, Dad going into that modern kind of Christian church where everything's all love and hugs and whatever else, and I ain't about any of that. I'll look at the Crusades and I'll look at their fucking deeds. Yeah. I'll look at, you know, they were all farmers that created collectives and brotherhoods.
Yeah. Fraternity.
For a greater good.
Fraternity.
Of something. And it was a completely different mindset to what the modern interpretation of it is now. So if you're going to have it like that, then yeah, put it in.
Well, I talked about this the other day from Bronze Age Pervert, and he was played this little clip, and I've listened to Bronze Age Pervert before, and I've read his book as well. But he said about like the Christianity versus like churchianity, and he was saying how it's very modern day now. It's completely feminized, and people are into going to the church. Like, you know, we said earlier, like the bake sales, and they go on the Sunday and
diverse.
And you go around and go, if you've got your 10p for the fucking fairy cake, you know, and it's like, you know, instead of like, you know, you can't go there and have like a real spiritual experience. Who's ever had a fucking spiritual experience at a fucking church? It's not possible.
We haven't even had it. We've probably even been at school. You know, we've been a Church of England school that I went to.
Yeah, I did as well.
There's nothing spiritual about it.
No, you can go to
Roman Catholic secondary school.
You can go to the fucking forest and have it on your own and have a fucking spiritual experience.
Yeah.
You know, you can't do that when it's not supposed to be. It's supposed to be not. You know, it's supposed to be mind numbing. I think to agree today,
because it's been again subverted for a long time.
I mean, yeah, we could fucking get into that for hours, couldn't we? But yeah, so yeah, obviously, big country. I got a friend got me into them. And then obviously I got you into them, and yeah, they're just one of the fucking
most underrated fucking rock bands from the island.
They influence fucking everybody.
Yeah.
They've influenced fucking every I had it on the other day, and my mother was always U2 in it, U2 in it. I was like, it's not fucking U2. First of all, and U2 wouldn't have fucking been anything they are without fucking this guy. Yeah. So you know,
well, even some of the more folky black metal bands that I listen to. I mean, there's one from London, Crom Dub.
Yeah.
You know, you listen to some of their riffs; it's very similar.
Yeah,
you can just imagine it. Like they've been listening to a load of fucking big country, and they've gone, you know what? Let's just put some blast beats on it.
There's an Opeth one. No, Opeth are very different. But there's an Opeth one that's so big country. I remember what I can't remember which album it is, but I was like, what? It's like it's that Faustian like space that it calls on, and it's the fucking masters of it. Especially when you listen to like stuff like The Storm and things like that, and you know, and Lost Patrol. Fuck me, it's like that's
Restless Natives.
Restless Natives is the big one. I mean, I've got goosebumps talking about like Restless Natives is someone else, but that's a true
the Flame of the West.
I mean, that guy, Flame of the West. That guy, I mean, that guy had he was in the Skids, punk band. He had a fucking mental breakdown before he even started Big Country. I mean, that's as true as he fucking is. And he ends up killing himself. I mean, that's, you know, I'm not saying he's like, you know, modern day Jesus or anything like that. but like, you know, the music is I mean, it goes a bit crappier towards the end.
Yeah.
It's more like Americanized country stuff. But the lyrics are still really good. And he's obviously a complete lefty and some of the like Peace in Our Time and stuff like that. But even the lyrics.
But even that though, yeah. I mean, like I jokingly like sent to one of my friends. You know, said, you know, who are you listening to? She was like, oh, Conqueror. And then she's like, who are you listening to? It's like Big Country at the Peace Festival in 1986 in Germany. And she was like, that's a bit gay. And I was like, they were one of the first bands to play like behind the fucking Iron Curtain in 1986. You know, where they're singing about fucking prideful nationalist kind of music, essentially. You know, of where like that doesn't sound pretty gay. Whereas Conqueror on the other hand, you know, with the fucking black makeup on,
all scary,
talking about goats.
It's I don't think some people understand their own true message. Like he was obviously, because I think a guy like him, if you spoke to Stuart Adamson, you'd probably want the same thing, but different methods of getting there. And like he obviously, you know, no nukes and all this. It's like, yeah, I agree. I don't think we should be fucking bombing all these countries to oblivion. This, you know, the industrial fucking, you know, military complex forever. It's like, yeah, I completely agree. And that's the difference with sort of the right wing mates I do have, who are complete sort of Reaganites, and they just see the world as a commodity and to be bought and sold on stock markets and stuff. And it's like, I've got more fucking common with probably the commies, you know, in a lot of ways, you know, but not something like a Green Party member. There's that joke about they're like watermelons, they're green on the outside but red on the inside, and they're just,
But I mean,
we've gone back on a tangent again.
yeah. I mean, yeah.
Sorry.
It's just too much to talk about, aren't we?
There is. We are approaching 2 hours now.
Yeah.
What would you recommend listening to this week?
16 horsepower.
There we go. 16 horsepower.
Woven Hand as well, which is pretty much
Woven Hand.
which is pretty much the same singer, but they're worth listening to. Who else have I been listening to recently? Who'd you recommend?
Well, obviously Big Country.
Always.
Obviously. The first 3 albums, The Crossing, Steel Town, that's got the opening track, Flame of the West, and The Seer. After that, you sort of really go into, I don't know what it is. They sort of lose the I mean, like Where the Roses Sown, obviously, on Steel Town, it's obviously an anti-war message, and
But it's directly related to World War One, though. So it's like there's a reason.
So but after that, it obviously goes a bit. There's some good songs out there, and some of the, like you said, the poetry, because some of the lyrics are really good, but the music loses a bit of it. But there's some fucking good riffs out there. I don't know what else I've been listening to, really. Let me just have a quick check. I mean, you don't want to do too much homework out there.
I mean, I've like.
There we go. Listen to some Wagner. There you go. Got to Dammerung. Listen to that. The Siegfried's Funeral March, and after that, you can watch Excalibur as well. If you haven't watched that, you can watch that as well. Now, that is a metaphysical, uplifting film. That is. They don't make films like that anymore. Not without a fair level of fucking pos theory. So yeah.
Oh.
Anything else to add?
Wisen up, everyone. It's gonna get tough.
Well, I'm hoping that was an introduction to all the topics we hope to be talking about.
I'm trying to get some more in.
But yeah, just wanted to ease you in with a bit of information based on knowledge that we know quite a bit about. And hopefully we haven't rambled too much and some of it made sense out there.
It will.
Cool.
Fingers crossed.
Cool.